Welcome, everyone. Um, Welcome to the SPARK StartHer podcast. Uh, Welcome to the SPARK StartHer podcast, the podcast dedicated to sharing stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I'm your host, Elizabeth Goede, and I'm here to fan the flame of your entrepreneurial spirit. Each week, we bring to you inspiring stories of women trailblazers from around the world who have sparked change in their industries, powered their ideas into thriving businesses, and pioneered their way to success. So, whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a startup enthusiast, or a seasoned business leader, join us as we delve into the journeys of these incredible women whose tales will surely ignite a spark in each one of us. My guest today is Jane Bromley. She is the founder of Stress. She knows firsthand the toll that constant stress and overwork can take on your health, relationships, and overall quality of life. Like many entrepreneurs, she found herself neglecting her own needs and her family in the pursuit of business success. But she refused to accept this as a reality. Using her own stress to loving life process, she was able to reduce her workload by 20%, reclaiming her time and reconnecting with what truly mattered. And now she's on a mission to help other entrepreneurs, especially women, to do the same. She's a digital nomad seeing the world while helping entrepreneurs. Jane, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm really pleased to be here.
So, Jane, you are joining us today from France. And I know that when we originally set up this podcast, you were in Mexico. And so when we talk about you being a digital nomad, I mean, you are really getting in your miles.
I am. I only came back from Mexico a week ago. So it's a lot colder here.
Yeah, that's the one drawback, right? When you go from more of a tropical environment back to the north. So, Jane, when we look at entrepreneurship, right, and starting our own businesses, what I've found through all these conversations is that we all get to it in a different place. I did have a guest several weeks ago who shared her experience where she just knew she was going to be an entrepreneur. She started her business like while she was, in college. So she sort of had that realm. But I know that from your background, you didn't necessarily become an entrepreneur right away. You actually started your business in the consulting side. Is that correct?
Actually, I worked for some big companies like Vodafone and Hewlett-Packard, and I was an employee, and I eventually got fed up with being a cog in a wheel. So in 2001, I set up my own consultancy, and I did some amazing projects. I ended up working with one of the senior teams in Microsoft. I worked with Merck & Co., the big pharmaceutical company. Generally, I worked across the United States and the whole of Europe, and of course the United Kingdom. And at the time, it was all about how businesses could fast track their growth. And that was about by looking after their staff, engaging their staff, and also putting their customers at the forefront. And above that, it was also turning the leadership team into a really powerful leadership team. So.
Yeah, I mean, what an incredible background and your experience with all these really, really big companies, and then going in and being able to help guide them really gives you a lot of great skills. And so when you think about what inspired you to get to the place where you are right now and, where you started sort of your new business, can you talk a little bit about how your experience previously sort of set you up to start your business now?
Well, yes, because like many people now, I mean, 63% of workers in the Western world say that they're burning out year after year. And we all know what it's like. I mean, I've just come from Mexico. Wow, they know how to take life at the right speed. And it's lovely to see the contrast. But here we've got into a situation where your boss is generally saying to you, can you do a little bit more? Can you just push through? Can you work a little harder? Can you go the extra mile? And that was fine to start with. And it was fine for me as well. But over the years, it's a little bit more every year, a little bit more every year, a little bit more. And we've also got to the point where technology is available, and all sorts of things. And traffic's got worse. And generally, I understand when people say that just life is really, really busy.
Right.
And so it was fine. But then bit by bit, I ended up finding that I was working faster. I was putting more pressure on myself, like us all. And I basically didn't realize, I had no me to warn me, but I didn't realize that when I couldn't relax as easily, when I couldn't feel peace as easily, when I got more irritable than I had been before, when I was overreacting to certain things. A customer screamed at me down the phone at 11 o'clock one night, the day before a board meeting that I hadn't ever done before. And normally I would have just looked at him and I would have just said, I don't think this is going to work. But instead I hyperventilated. And it was actually a trauma response, and I didn't realize that till later. And what I didn't realize is all of these signs, and also the fact of just always being on the go, and just like, I don't know, just trying to be Superwoman, and it just didn't make sense. But I didn't have anyone there to say, whoa, these look like signs that you're going to burn out if you carry on. So one day I hit a wall, and I slept for 16 hours a day, and for the other 8 hours, I was not any use. So all of those things that had seemed super urgent, super whatever, I just went, it was hellish. It was really, really tough. And I got to the point of, it just took me a long time to heal myself. And I'm now on a mission. I do not want anyone to have to burn out, because so many people think that they have to just keep on, to ignore the stress, to push on through. They go, well, I've got no choice. Or they tell me they haven't got time to improve their life. But don't do what I did. It took me ages to heal. So I eventually healed, and now I changed my whole life, and I work full time. I work online, but I work full time. And I have, although I'm in different countries, it's just the same pressures, but I never allow myself to go anywhere near it. I've learned how to enjoy every day. I've learned how to make sure that I can always put my feet up and chill out. And I even work with people who've got children and really busy families, and they tell me to start with, well, I can't relax. I have to be on the go all the time.
Right.
But actually what they eventually realize is that it's like running a car with the wrong fuel. It's like your car, if you didn't put good quality fuel in, you wouldn't beat your car up because it wasn't performing. So why do we beat ourselves up when we don't perform, when we're not giving ourselves what we need? Right. And not just that, I realized that both for me and for the people I'm working with, that when you move away from that wall, from that edge where you're just pushing yourself to the limit, and you move into what I call the nurture zone, you not only laugh more, you not only have more fun, not only do your family say, wow, it's so good you're back, not only do you have all of that, not only do you wake up in the morning looking forward to your day, but actually your performance and your results just naturally float up. And so, as you can tell, I am seriously passionate about two things. One, that no one needs to burn out. Within 2 weeks of working within 2 hours, they're feeling relief. Within 2 weeks of working using the process, which I learned through burning out, they are actually feeling so much better. And these are people who thought it wasn't possible. So no one needs to burn out. And then the second thing I'm even equally, probably even more passionate about, is about people not feeling they have to just exist, not going through the pain, feeling that actually they can be full of the joys of spring, and they can. And even without changing your life, without changing from your job, and without changing obviously your family, you can find ways to nurture yourself. And I would say it's essential if you want to be performing really well, if you want to be fully living your life. I would say that unless you nurture yourself, unless you do the things that I didn't do, then you are going to be a shadow. You're going to be, you're not going to be half of who you should be.
Right. Well, it's, I think you've brought up really good points. And I know that our listeners come from all different, backgrounds and points in life. I think that, that it's very common. I think people that work in corporate America, that work in consulting and very, very high pressure types of positions, have that sort of visceral reaction that is their body telling them, hey, you gotta slow down and take a time out, because we can't keep moving in this direction. Yes. And what I would love to talk about, Jane, is how you formulated your process, and if you think that your background of working in corporate America, and then, or not corporate America, but in corporate companies, and then
part of it was America. Hewlett Packard,
yeah.
Microsoft, Intel, they were all America.
That's true. But having worked sort of more in that corporate structure and then working the consulting side, I'm curious, drawing from your background, did that have any input into creating your process that you have now that you help people work through?
Well, definitely. It's good insight. So for instance, a lot of it is coaching. So, and even the first part, which is an online, just download the first part, and it's full of coaching questions, and it's the coaching questions that I've found to be most impactful. So that's all that. But also the creation of the whole process. I mean, to be able to create a process from scratch is something I did with my previous business. And it took me years to actually learn it. So the fact that I've managed to create it much more quickly is, yes, it's based on my experience of myself and with my customers, but actually it allows me to put step by step. But in addition, the most fundamental thing is that all these years I've been seeing people, and I've been going through stress. I mean, that horrible moment when you get to work and then something really bad goes, or your boss is in a furious mood, and your heart and your stomach just sink. So I have a lot of experience of just how challenging it can seem, and also from my own thing, getting so close to the situation that I couldn't see the warning bells that my own body was giving me.
Yeah, I do think that that's something that, is worth highlighting. It's sort of like, listen to the warning signs that your body is giving you. It's, if you're sick all the time, or, those types of things are certainly, warning signs to reach out to someone, like you, or, a healthcare, mental health care worker, whatnot, to sort of help through some of those situations. As far as developing the process and the system, did you find that the combination between documentation and actual one-on-one coaching and those types of things, did you find that came from the types of, and again, very, very different type of application previously, of course, talking about growing their business and business growth, which of course would be important to, anyone who has a business. But when you think about sort of approaching more of the, for lack of a better way to describe it, the sort of like mental health side or physical health side of managing your work, did you find that input into your process, the creation of your process?
Well, yes, because I learned, for instance, that you can't just train someone. You have to train them, and then there's a workbook. So, for instance, they go through the really powerful 5 steps of the stress to loving life process. And then they do workbooks, and there are regular question and answer webinars and things like that, and the coaching as well. And it's a mixture of those. So it needs to be your brain up here, so that your brain can really get it. Then it needs to be, because the problem is your nervous system, it's gone into what's called dysregulation. So where you get fight or flight, but you get stuck in fight or flight, and you cannot relax as much, you cannot feel peace, you cannot heal as much, you can't sleep as well, all those things. And that's a major thing to look out for, any of those signs. And so as a result of that, you need to feel the emotions that allow your nervous system to go, right, okay, maybe I can heal, maybe I can go back into the. So there's a whole bunch of things that I learned, and some of them I learned the hard way. So the reason I got into coaching was I was doing a project with a chief exec and his whole leadership team, and we worked on a project for 11 months, and then he actually had a major meltdown and tore a whole bunch of everyone's work apart. And that was where I discovered that you can only tell someone so much. They have to work it out. They have to get the answers themselves. And it's so key with this topic. You can't, I can tell you till you're blue in the face, please look after yourself, please nurture yourself. But it's only by you going, oh my gosh, you're so right, that you will actually make the change.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's true. So Jane, when you think about making this transition, right? So you go from this very, I'm going to call it more formulaic, right? I mean, there's been a path very clearly carved for what it's like to, consult with businesses, and there are many of us that sort of went through that either, on both sides, right? Having consultants as well as being consultants. And then you transition into the entrepreneurial. And so my first question is, did you become a nomad at the same time as you started your business? Or did you start to become a nomad before you left sort of more the traditional consulting? Tell me a bit about how the nomad adventure started.
No, I've only been being a nomad for 4.5 years, whereas I actually set up the consultancy business 20 something years ago, and so it was actually, I just got to a point where I had been helping people with and they'd be getting great results for ramping up their businesses and working with some great companies, and I just got to the point where friends kept on telling me, Jane, go traveling. And a friend I hadn't seen in over a year turned up at a party, and the first words that came out of his mouth were, Jane, go traveling. And my parents actually did loads and loads of traveling before I was born, and carried on after. And so I come from a heritage of parents who traveled the whole way across Africa, from what was Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, right the way up through the Sahara Desert, right the way across the whole of Africa. And so it's always been in my blood. And I was like, oh, and eventually it's almost like, when life is giving you a message and everyone just converges on you, and I'm like, okay, I'm out of here. And it's great. It's just been a wonderful experience, a deep learning curve. If you want to live in an environment with no comfort zone, then I recommend it to you. It's just, you feel alive, but don't get the impression. Some people think that I'm off just traveling and not working, and and it's not like that. I work full time, but I have the evenings and the weekends, and then sometimes I give myself holidays, and bingo.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that if anyone has enough time to be concerned about when people are working, then that's on them. Especially just knowing how how the world has gotten so small now through the internet and things like that. I mean, we all work different time zones too. I mean, there was a period of time when I actually supported a lot of initiatives actually out of Europe and even some out of Asia. And so what you find is I could do anything I wanted to for the most part in the afternoon or even during the day when I worked with Asia, because I didn't work until night. or when I worked with Europe, I started work at 3 a.m. So, you just never know what people's schedules are. So I would also encourage everyone to be a little enlightened from that standpoint as well. So Jane, when you look at, and I do think being a digital nomad is a really interesting, first of all, it's really exciting. And I do think that it opens up the opportunity for people to think more broadly about what their environment, what type of environment they really need to support the work that they're doing. And I love how I think it naturally also dovetails into your business, right? And this idea of like the balance, right? If you take yourself into new environments and things like that, it allows you to sort of, I would think, and maybe you could confirm this, does it bring back more balance from the standpoint where you don't have the natural stresses around you? Or
no, actually, I think it forces you to be continually looking at your balance. But of course, I've been doing it for 4 and a bit years now, so I've got quite good at adjusting. But for instance, I've learned not the first time I moved country, I then went back to work 3 days afterwards, and I'm like, I'm never doing this ever again. It was just so much pressure. And so I now know to give myself a gap before I get started. And of course, I have to find accommodation in the next country, and some of those countries don't speak English. And if it's French or Spanish, that's cool because I speak French, Spanish and English. But I went to Bulgaria, and the first few days were really, really stressful. And so yes, but on the other hand, I don't have a family, but on the other hand, most of my clients do have families, and therefore they don't have the option to just disappear off. Although my parents, actually, when they were sailing around the Mediterranean after they retired, they met lots and lots of families who'd just taken the whole family with them and disappeared off. So I think when it comes down to it, most people don't travel like I do, because they want the roots and they want a bit of normality, a bit of stability. So I think you have to be a certain sort of person, and I think the instability of being a nomad would actually stress some people out. But I like winging it. I like the freedom.
I like it too. And, it's interesting that you say that when your parents were sailing around the Mediterranean, that they found a bunch of families. My brother, actually, that's his, he's in the process of completing the full blue water, as he calls it, retrofit on his boat, because that's his goal, is to take, his family and go around the world. So exciting times. Yes. Meanwhile, yes. I sit in my house, very, very stable in one location.
Yeah. And I think this is a bigger picture. You're almost pointing to a bigger picture of people who are like nomads, are generally people who've said, whoa, is this really how I want to live? And I'm not. So that's sort of one extreme of the thing. But what I'd like people to realize is that you can have a lot more freedom. You can have, and you don't necessarily need to go to the lengths of being a nomad. It's one solution. But lots of people they say, oh, I feel so free, and they're still doing the same job and they're still in the same situation. So you don't have to just rely on your holidays to get the breaks, because that is a disaster.
It is a disaster. So Jane, what would you say is the biggest struggle that you have in your business? And that might come from, sort of traveling and not, but what do you think has been the biggest struggle for you?
The biggest struggle is people's belief. Is lots of people, and it's whatever, there's still enough customers and people who actually go, no, I'm not going to put up with this, life is rubbish. But there's a lot of people that I feel very sad for, who are either saying, well, I just have to, it's life, isn't it? I just have to put up with it, which is really a disastrous belief, because you don't, and you're just a shadow of yourself. Or another one, and I had a friend saying this the other day, I was really sorry for her. Oh, I'm too busy to improve my life. So it's the sadness of seeing people. And then on the other hand, sometimes I bump into a whole bunch of people who hear my story. At the moment, for instance, I've just got a whole bunch of people who are going, wow, I'm still stuck, and it's tough. I've burnt out. I didn't see it coming. And I'm envious of you, because you're out the other side. And I'm like, well, what a pity that people have to go through that.
Right.
And it's the pain of seeing people not realizing. That's the hardest thing for me.
Yeah. Well, let's turn things around and make it the happy part. So what would you say is the biggest success, or, the happiest part?
Oh, well, the happiest part is seeing every customer, every person who comes, and I put them through an evaluation to start with, to find out exactly where they are, and then they and also to make certain that they really are determined and they're going to take action. And so within 2 hours, seeing their faces light up with, oh my gosh, there could be hope. And then within 2 weeks saying, I cannot believe I went through the last 2 or 3 years through hell, and I'm just been going through such a tough time, and in 2 weeks I have made a change that, and my whole life is so much better. Why didn't I do it 2 weeks ago? And then seeing at the end of the 9-week course, where they go from stress to thriving, and seeing them actually get so much confidence in their ability to just do it, and them saying, you know what, I really do enjoy every day. And so to see people back away from that danger zone and start to feel alive and to feel themselves again, and their children, when I hear about their children saying, Mummy, you're back, it's so nice that you're back, it's bliss. It makes the whole thing so great.
I love hearing those stories. I mean, what an incredible, it's really exciting, I think, to be able to see such a huge transformation in someone. I mean, what an awesome benefit of your job. So Jane, this is sort of an unusual question, but what would you say has been the biggest surprise in having your business? Is there anything that's been really unexpected?
Yeah, as I said, the fact that the surprise is the fact that so many people are nervous to try something, to try and fix it. And but to be fair, it's partly the nervous system. So when your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight, then it's really hard you're so blinkered, because you think there's a bear coming at you, but it's, you've been on the run for so long that you cannot see. So I think it's just how locked in people are because of their nervous system being out of dysregulated. And it's just sad, but that fortunately there are a whole bunch of people that I get to that are like, no, I'm not going to stick with this. This is just, but yeah,
Well, I think that hopefully by having these conversations, people become a little bit more enlightened to the fact that they don't have to struggle, right? They don't have to have that that type of lifestyle. Like, you can actually enjoy and be happy with things when you actually have balance and you work with you. So Jane, as we wrap up here, I have 2 sort of final questions for you. One is, how do people get in touch with you if they're looking to sort of, eliminate the burnout or avoid the burnout? How do they find you?
Well, they can go onto Facebook, where I am, and they'll see posts and free things, etc., and tips and everything. And if you look for jane.bromley.90, so the number 90, you'll find me there. Okay. And also this coming Tuesday, I've got a webinar, which is about how you can give yourself love, because most people don't realize, but actually underpinning a lot of this, it's just that we're not actually being our good friends to ourselves. So how you can give yourself love, and by that transform your whole year and go from a stress situation to thriving. And it's an hour of lots of tips, of lots of insights and everything, and so you'll find that on my website page. But I think at the end, if have you got a way that I can share the link somehow?
Yeah, I sure do. And Jane, can you confirm the date of that?
Yes, Tuesday the 7th. I think it's the 7th. Yes, Tuesday
Okay.
the 7th, and it's at 5 p.m. Central European, 4 p.m. UK time, and that's 11 a.m. EST.
Okay, great. And also to confirm, at the time of airing, this is 2024. So that is available for everyone for the next few days. And I hope that everyone reaches out to Jane and takes advantage of that. The other thing, Jane, that I always ask all of my guests is when someone's considering starting a company, what type of advice, one word or a short phrase, would you give as a form of inspiration to a woman looking to start a business?
Okay. 2 phrases: believe in yourself and be your best friend.
Oh, I love both of those. So good. Really good. And Jane, is there anything else that we didn't cover today that you want to make sure that you share with our audience?
There's so much extra to cover, to be honest. So nothing really comes to mind, except just to say to people, are you going to live another year feeling that you're existing, or do you want to feel alive and to be really enjoying each day?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, of course, I would choose feel alive for sure, for sure. So, Jane, thank you so much for being my guest today, and to all of our listeners who joined us today on the Spark Starter podcast. It's been a pleasure bringing you the uniquely inspiring stories that ignite female entrepreneurs into action. I've been your host, Elizabeth Goede, and on behalf of all the awe-inspiring entrepreneurs out there, I encourage you to not only dream big, but to ignite those dreams into action. Remember, every spark can lead to an extraordinary fire. So keep the spark alive for today, tomorrow, and the vibrant future beyond. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast to never miss a spark. Until next time, stay ignited.